Now, you may recognize the uniform, and you may recognize the period in which this photograph was taken. Do you recognize the face? No, actually, you wouldn't. It's my grandfather. So my grandfather, Sidney Oldin, he was born on the 6th of May, 1908. So today would have been his birthday, and he would have been 106. But he didn't quite make it to that age. He passed away when he was 74. And at the outbreak of the Second World War, he already had 5 children, so he didn't have to go to the front line and fight, but he did have to stay in the UK and play his part. And at the end of the Second World War, he went home, had 2 more children, he had 7 children in total, and became a self-employed builder and plasterer. Now, my grandfather, he didn't own his own home, and he certainly didn't have a pension. It wasn't until 1948 when the UK introduced universal social security cover. But for my grandfather, unfortunately, it was too little and too late. So I think it's probably fair to say that he led a rather frugal life and was probably poor. Hey, this good-looking chap here is my dad, my father. And he was born in 1937. He's 76 now. He started working when he was 16, and he retired at 65. And the reason he retired at 65 was that was the age in which he could receive his UK state pension. So he worked for 49 years. And during that time, he paid into the state pension and some company pension schemes. So now, he's married to my mum, obviously. He's in receipt of his pension. And I'd say it's a fairly average pension. But he does own his own home. And he does have some savings. It's me. So I was born in 1970. I'm 43. And I started working when I was 18. And at that time when I started working, in the UK, a woman could receive her state pension at the age 60. But that was 20-odd years ago. And now, I can't get my pension until I'm 66. But in fact, it'll probably be later than that, probably nearer when I'm 70. Like my father, I own my own home with a mortgage, unfortunately. And there's probably no surprise for you, but I have investments and I save. I'm a financial advisor. It's like you don't often go to the dentist and find your dentist has got no teeth. I accept now that I'm the sole person responsible for my financial future. And I've decided I'm going to retire at 50. Isn't she gorgeous? This is my daughter, India, and she was born in 2008, so she's 5. She's not working yet, but she does have a bank account and investments. I'm a good mum. She's educated here in France. She's bilingual, so I suspect she'll go off to university in another country. She may live and work in another country. And in fact, I think mobility for her generation would be much more common. Actually, I did ask her what she wants to do as a job, and she wants to be a TV star. Can you see the evolution in pensions in just in my family in 4 generations? Can you see that? Okay, so I want to now touch on some of the problems we see in the world with regard to pensions. 3 main things here, and I'm going to go through them in detail. The first thing is that we're living longer. So there's probably no surprise. 65 years ago, the average life expectancy was 65. But if we have a look at some numbers here, these are the life expectancy rates for males, females, and married couples. And you can see, just taking the first one example, a male aged 65 today has a high probability of reaching 80. Females a greater possibility because, of course, we live longer. Yeah. And interestingly, a married couple 65 has an 88% chance or probability of reaching 80. So there's probably a moral behind that story that we must stay married. And of course, what this means is that we have to plan for our pension for a longer period of time. I'm going to talk to you about dependency ratios. This is a tool in which governments can analyse the population in their country, and we can see the number of dependents, which are clarified as people under 16 and over 75, compared with the working population. So a ratio is the number of dependents per 100 of workers, and as you can see in America, the ratio is fairly average. And it's made up equally, generally equally, between children and we'll call them the old age. The situation is quite similar in the UK and in France. If we look at Japan, there's a very, very high dependency ratio, and the dependents are mainly the older generation. And if we look at the other end of the spectrum, we look at India. Similar dependency ratio to the US, but look at that, massive weighting towards children. So we're going to see an enormous baby boom in India in the future like we've never seen before. So what does this mean? When we have a high dependency ratio, it's a problem, a real problem for governments. Actually, it's a problem for workers because it's the workers who maintain the social security payments. So they have all the burden. The second problem in the world today is that the role of the governments has changed. Governments have encouraged, if not forced us, to look after our own pensions. And in some countries, they help us and encourage us to do this by giving, for example, tax relief on the payments we make into our pensions. And if we don't look after ourselves in retirement, then the government's going to do two things. They're either going to reduce your pension or increase your taxes. And how do you feel about that? The third problem in the world today is that the way we work has changed. People are starting to work later in life because they want to complete a full-time education, go to university. More people are self-employed. More people are changing jobs more regularly, which means that they may not be eligible for example, company pension schemes. And what this means is that planning for your retirement is getting tougher and tougher. Now, when I talk to people about their pension planning, I can clearly categorize two types of people. The first ones we'll call the pessimists, and you can probably gather they've got very negative views. And these are the sort of things they say to me when I say, you should start preparing for your pension. I think my grandfather definitely said the first one and probably said the second as well. And those same pessimists, when they think about what their pension or what their retirement is going to look like, these are the sort of comments they make. Again, very negative. And that negativity means that they lack a desire to do anything. They'll probably keep what money they have in cash. They probably won't do anything, in fact. However, on a more positive note, I do meet some people who are positive, and we'll call them the optimists. And they, when we talk about planning for their retirement, it's very high on their list of priorities, and they're the sort of things they'll save. And again, those optimists, when they think about what their retirement might look like in the future, these are the sort of comments I hear. And I probably would concur with all those. Do you have an idea now which category you might fit into? Can you identify with either of those categories? I think retirement, though, means different things to different people. It's probably globally accepted that it means it's a time when you spend more time with your family and friends. you do something physically, you be physically active, mentally stimulating, maybe take up a new project, a new hobby. For me personally, I think retirement means freedom, happiness, relaxation, and no stress. Old is the new young. I've put that. I do believe old is the new young. There has been a tendency for us to encourage people to retire early. And perhaps that was to tackle youth unemployment. But really, people who continue to work, and we'll call them the over 65s, they have so much experience, and we need to stop this experience draining away. They're motivated, reliable, loyal. The older generation as well do contribute massively to society, because in retirement, they continue to spend money. They pay their taxes. We need that. And I also see a change in the older generation in families. I see more and more people, more grandparents, looking after grandchildren, paying perhaps for their grandchildren's education. So I really do think old is the new young. Let's broaden the outlook now. Let's have a look at some facts around the world. This list up here shows us where most people feel their pensions should be paid from. Now, the top one up there is the government. That's a very, very strong feeling here in France, that the government should pay for your retirement. In China, it's the complete opposite. They don't think at all that the government should pay for them. Unbelievably, people still play the lottery and think that's going to look after them when they're older. And I think investment should actually be a little bit higher up on that list. So I suppose the debate that we have at the moment is who should pay for a retirement? Is it the society or is it the individual? I don't know what you think. Some figures up here. These are the general figures, the age tranche in which people generally retire around the world. Between 57 and 61, there are some exceptions. For example, in Turkey, women often retire at 48. Men in the US retire at 65. And as you can see, again, women generally retire earlier than men. But I think we should reject this idea of being forced to retire by governments and by companies at a certain date, at a certain age. Surely we should all retire when we want to, when we desire to. This is research done by the OECD. They looked at the 34 countries that make up the OECD, and they found that on average, a male retirement will last 18 years, women a little bit longer. The worrying thing is that most people feel as though the money, i.e. their pension, is going to run out halfway through their retirement. So, taking that as an example, someone retiring, a male, after 9 years, they're going to have no more money left. It's a bit worrying, really. Again, this is global research. It does take into account developing and developed countries. And this is the figure at the top, 25,000 euros. This is the figure that people feel that they're going to need in retirement to have a comfortable retirement. Comfortable is the key word there. Not have any luxuries, not be poor. And to obtain that, you need roughly a figure of 360,000 euros. Now, have you thought about how much you're going to need in retirement? Does anybody know? When I think about my situation, I think, well, I'll probably need 75% of what I earn at the moment. It's an idea for me. In India, in the country of India, people say they need to have 98% of what they earn. So, for people who do want to embrace their financial lifestyle, their financial future, these are a few things that they can do. Save as early as possible. In the UK, generally, people start saving at 25. Save more. Save, save, and save. It's important as well that when you save, you don't just keep your money in cash. Because cash, the value of cash, will be eroded away in the long term by inflation. I think everybody needs to educate themselves a little bit more as well. Go to seminars, read books, ask for help. And the last one there is, indeed, take advice from professional advisors. It's not very common in France, actually, for people to take financial advice, because, again, there is this view that in France, the state will look after you. But I'll show you the effect of using a financial advisor. Research shows us that, generally speaking, people who use the help of a professional will accrue more money. In fact, they'll double their money with a financial advisor. And the figures at the bottom there, that shows that if you're saving on a regular basis, without the help of a professional, people tend to save €50 a month. But with an advisor, they save a lot more. As I said, in France, people don't save very often. The most common place where we find regular savers is actually in Asia. And they tend to be married, full-time workers, and male. The problem is, we believe that only 50% of the population actually do review and make plans for their pension. If the 50% that don't do anything, they say, well, yes, I've got some ideas in my head, I'm thinking about some numbers, but it's just not good enough. So, as I've explained, we know we're living longer. Dependency ratios are getting higher. The governments are going to be under pressure, and they're going to push that pressure onto families. We think that we want to pass on wealth to the next generation, but if we're not careful, we're going to be passing on debt. So are you all motivated to change? Are you going to start saving? I hope so. Thank you very much.